Welcome everyone, Christine here with the Lizardmen version of Rambo, Oxyotl. Why do we call him Rambo? Well, it's because he's been stuck in the realms of chaos for thousands of years, survived while fighting an unending guerrilla war against the forces of chaos. So you really have to be careful around Oxyotl. You never know what horrors he has experienced. The fact that he's even somewhat sane is pretty telling something about his character. He is ridiculous in the lore, though a bit unfortunately in the game he's kind of worthless in battle himself. Like, his campaign is really powerful, his army is ridiculous, his armies in general are ridiculous, but he personally is kind of worthless. He's pretty fragile, so he can't really act as a tank. His ranged ability is of course limited, because ranged lords and heroes just don't do very well currently in battles in Total War Warhammer 3. Hopefully it will be changed with the next patch, but we'll have to wait and see. But it doesn't matter. Just like it doesn't matter for Lina. Oxyotl is on a completely different level than pretty much any other legendary lord in the entire game. He is absolutely ridiculous. So let's look at his faction effects, his lord effects, and how his campaign plays out. So, faction-wide effects, you get upkeep benefit of minus 25% for skink and chameleon skink units, and you gain benefits the more you rank up those units, so an additional 1% stats to those units as you rank them up. You basically start with an army of chameleon skinks, stalkers, skink cohorts, and 2 feral bastillodons. You start a war against a minor faction of Khorne, where the only challenge is the fact that they have a bloodthirster from the very start, though you can run in circles around him and kill him with ranged units. The way these units work is that they're skirmisher infantry units. They can fire while moving. Like, the chameleon stalkers are more like a melee unit with a precursor weapon, but they can do a ridiculous amount of damage, and they do actually have the ability of really bringing some damage before they go into melee. The chameleon skinks are the main ranged units. They have a good amount of ammunition. They can just run in circles around their enemy. They have stock, vanguard deployment, quite a lot of missile resistance. So if you're thinking you can kill these guys with ranged attacks, be prepared to be disappointed. That is what makes them ridiculous. Now, Oxyotl himself, in terms of his lord effects, he gains an immunity to diplomatic penalties from trespassing. We'll get into that in just a second. He gets the Masterful Ambush stance, which requires less movement range to adopt, and has a reduced detection chance. So, sadly enough, he doesn't have an attack stance in ambush, but still, he does have a ridiculous level of ambush chance in his campaign. And then, of course, he gets Sanctum gain per turn 1, research rate, unit experience 150 per turn. That is a ridiculous level of unit experience, because it's actually going to be, 225 per turn just from the start with this skill and this skill. Or very early on, anyway. You get benefits when fighting against demons. You get stock, snipe, and greatly reduced chance of being detected while in ambush stance. This is pretty insane, because having snipe is ridiculous, because snipe is the ability of shooting while staying hidden. Now, of course, you need to be careful how you use this, when you use this, but it is an absurd level of power over here. You get hero recruitment of skink oracles, all provinces. You get an upkeep benefit to skink oracles, troglodons, coatl, and missile resistance for those units. 5% casual replenishment when in foreign territory, 10% missile damage when in foreign territory, global recruitment capacity +2. Then you get 15% campaign movement range, extra ammunition. Oxyotl's own army is absurd. You do have the golden blowpipe, but not necessarily going to be that great. You also start with a skink oracle. And also, you start with the tier 2 spawn pool. So that means from turn 1 you can recruit a skink chief. My advice would be to take over this particular settlement, which you can do on turn 1. Get your income building, then get the skink chief. That's going to give you casualty replenishment. Now it's very, very easy. You deal with these guys on turn 1, take this settlement, then on turn 2, pretty much you take over this settlement, and that's it. That's your starting province, your situation. What do you do after? Well, you do have a good situation over here with the Cult of Sotik, and if you're playing on a high difficulty, what you need to know about the Lizardmen and Lustria is that the vast majority of times they will win out against the forces of the Skaven, Luthor Harkon, Bretonnia, etc. So basically the Lizardmen will control Lustria. So you don't have to worry about attacks from the north. And even if they do lose Lustria, it's going to take a significant amount of time for that to happen. Besides, you don't necessarily care about Lustria. Well, there's some special structures over here that you can care about. But your normal campaign path on land would be to go east, capture the entirety of the southern Cast Wastes. You don't have penalties in the southern Cast Wastes. For Oxyotl's army, you don't have penalties on the settlements. And if I recruit another lord, let's go with Osiris, you can see that even Osiris, even a second lord, is not taking attrition. So one of the hidden effects here, it might be a Lizardman effect actually, I'm not entirely sure on this, but one of the effects in Oxyotl's campaign is that none of your armies takes Cast Waste attrition, which is actually a significant benefit when dealing with the Cast Waste, because having immunity to attrition to one army is great, having immunity to attrition from the Cast Waste, which generally do cause attrition, to all your armies is very powerful. So you could do that, but to win Oxyotl's campaign, you need to deal with the visions, 6 of the following, and take a fairy settlement. To get his long campaign victory conditions, you need to do 25 of the following, normal and hard ones. So what are the visions? The visions are missions around the world. You'll start with one to basically eliminate the Brazen Throne. Now basically these are going to be, like imagine quest battles is popping off all over the world that you can auto-resolve, by the way, by default without the mod, and coming up constantly and giving you significant campaign rewards every couple of turns. And you can teleport to them. Now it used to be that you could teleport back to your capital or teleport multiple times each turn, but they removed that. So you can only teleport once per turn. So you gotta be a bit more careful, but you are absolutely ridiculous. You don't face penalties for trespassing, so you can always teleport in any territory around the world for a mission that comes up. And generally it's going to be to eliminate some army or some rogue army basically is going to spawn over here full of demons and Siren Cast Waste. That can be pretty nasty, but in my experience, if you've got that situation, don't rush it necessarily, because it could end up being passive. I'm not entirely certain if that's the case all the time, but sometimes it will be passive, giving you some time to be able to accumulate enough forces if you get an entire army of like Keeper of Secrets or Bloodthirsters to deal with, which by the way can happen pretty early in your campaign, so be a bit careful about that. It is a bit ridiculous, though it does seem to happen far less often than it used to. I think they made the change. But here's the insane thing about Oxyotl's campaign. So you can take the land-based route, or you can take those missions, those instant teleportation missions that will take you around the world and say, okay, so I get a mission to teleport into Sylvania. Then you can conquer all of Sylvania with Oxyotl's army. You think Vlad is going to be able to stop you? No. Vlad's army is just going to be easy pickings. Vlad himself is going to be a bit trickier to deal with, sure, but you have the power to eliminate any other faction on their home territory from very early on. And you can always escape if things are getting dicey, because you can always teleport back home. You can also set up sanctums around the world. So if at one point things aren't necessarily going your way, you can set up a sanctum. Now sanctums give you some very significant benefits. The one you start will give you an upkeep benefit, as well as visibility over the local region and adjacent region. Though this one is, well, this one is the basic structure, you're always going to have it. There are various structures, but basically significant army benefits when it comes down to it. So casualty replenishment, all those kind of things. The more substantial one is the capstone of Tepak, which gives you ward save. Now, here's the thing about the capstone. You can only put one capstone faction-wide, but it also gives you another teleportation location. You always will have, you shouldn't put it in your provincial capital, in your capital, actually, because you'll always be able to travel to your capital. But you can put it around the world for a sanctum, and then when you decide you're feeling like it, you can always go back there whenever you want. Though, remember, you can only teleport once per turn. That is the power that Oxyotl has. Because he's immune to diplomatic penalties to trespassing, he can go anywhere around the world and conquer the entire world. Every type of climate for Oxyotl is suitable climate. All of it. Without exception. So, how you choose to play this campaign, where you choose to play the campaign, is up to you. Oh, you want to go over to Ulfon, conquer all of it, get the Sword of Cain? Go ahead. It would be a bit of a waste on Oxyotl, I feel, but you could do it. You want to go into the Northern Cast Waste and show Archeon who's the most powerful legendary lord in the game? You can do so. You want to conquer the entirety of the Empire, the entirety of Cathay? You can do so. This is probably the easiest campaign, actually, to conquer the entire world, I might add, because due to the flexibility that Oxyotl has in his campaign, you can get to areas faster and go to undefended areas of the campaign map, conquer those. Or, if you want a challenging campaign, which obviously would be it's one of the things that makes this campaign fun. Because you can have a very easy, relaxed campaign. There's no faction over here in the Southern Castways that's going to oppose you except Kairos, and I'm going to say it bluntly, you annihilate Kairos in a straight-up fight. Because Kairos does have a lot of magical ability, he's also going to get a lot of Forsaken. You dance around those Forsaken and his short-range units very, very easily with Chameleon Skinks. You should, by the way, only recruit Chameleon Skinks, maybe a couple of Chameleon Stalkers, but it's a ridiculous amount of power that you do have in your army, and you can dance around entire factions. It gets even better and worse for your enemies. I'm not sure I would want to fight a campaign in multiplayer against Oxyotl because it is ridiculous. Other factions have at least some kind of limitation bound by terrain. Oxyotl is like, terrain? What's that? But it gets worse. These missions, these visions, they give you significant rewards. Beyond the obvious money that you're going to get, one of the significant benefits that Oxyotl's going to get in his campaign is that a lot of these missions give blessed spawnings. A significant number of them. Blessed spawnings are units you can globally recruit that are better than regular units in Lizardmen campaigns. You can recruit them anywhere around the world for a ridiculous amount of power. So, imagine this. Imagine this scenario. Let's say you're playing Oxyotl. You've done a number of these. You've got a lot of blessed spawnings, let alone the regiments of renown over here, which is, by the way, the Lizardmen have a huge list of regiments of renown. You decide, okay, I'm gonna go in, let's say, the Darklands. Let's say we show up at Grimgore's border, right? We teleport over here. With Oxyotl's army, you conquer Saber Mountain. Grimgore obviously turns around, sends 4 stacks barreling your way. Well, here's what you do the turn you conquer Saber Mountain. You recruit a lord, and you fill up his army with blessed spawnings. In a single turn, you've conquered a provincial capital of a powerful enemy, and you've created a second really powerful army in that same turn. That's something very few factions could be able to deal with, and certainly not AI. Even if you're a player, how the hell would you deal with that, actually? That kind of potential that someone has in their campaign to just show up on their territory. Sure, actually, it depends on the kind of missions you're getting, but you can always set up sanctums and teleport next to a sanctum and move in ambush stance, and they're going to have a hard time detecting you. So surprise Oxyotl showing up in your core territory, just annihilating you in your campaign, is a real thing. That's what makes the campaign fun. That's what makes it versatile. Dynamic. It's the most dynamic campaign of any campaign in the game. And it's really, really fun. You will steamroll over everyone, but you will have a lot of fun doing so. That's all there is to it. Costin here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.